Hello, world, and welcome to Creating Light with Kelsey. We have arrived to my story part 3. This is all that I had recorded from 2021 as far as sharing my story. And then from there, it pivoted into how I started to approach healing. And this episode is most definitely the rawest, the raw. We can speak. We got this. We can do this. We can do hard things. This episode is the rawest part of my story that I've shared to date within any time frame of this storytelling journey. Like this episode, we just are so direct. We just shot straight from the hip at the beginning, which now, since I'm re-recording, we've got this chunk of me talking in present time in 2024. But like in 2021, like we just went boom, just trigger warning, and then boom, we went in. So if the other two episodes where I shared my story felt too much or too activating to listen to, then I would advise skipping this one, honestly. Not that I go into too much more detail, there's just more there because I didn't tiptoe around certain verbiage and also if the other ones were triggering and you're checking in with your body right now to see what your capacity is, if something and you're wanting to continue to listen today, if something is stirring within you, listen to that. Listen to this because that is also something's resonating because that's also your own darkness. That's shifting your shadows. You know, they're being seen if you feel triggered by listening to me speak. And so then that is also the inside in your darkness asking for your attention to pay attention. And how can you tend to that for the benefit of all beings? How can you tend to that for the highest good of you and for all? Because that's what the darkness asks of each of us. So it no longer so it continues to grow and have light shed on it. So then we're no longer operating out of shadow. Because when we're in that place, we're still operating off of hurt. And it's a cliche for a reason. And I've had direct experience of this recently and coming to terms with that. That's a whole other thing, but hurt people hurt people. So as you feel yourself activated, I invite you to turn inwards instead of avoid. I have a lot that I want to just talk about before I'm sharing the old episode because it's just there's so much information that it could be continued to be unpacked and noticing things and teaching and yeah, the thing I keep coming back to with these 3 episodes in particular is being with the discomfort and the lovely human mind coming in of, oh, if we keep doing this, shouldn't we, no longer be uncomfortable? And in this episode, I did discuss like, oh, like the more I do it or the more I show up, the easier it does get to talk about these things. And I would say to that ex to there's I still identify as that as truth in some ways that I can talk about it and continue to share multiple perspectives and views and with each layer of healing that I've done around this, like you understand and integrate more. And that's where the ease can come in the way that we speak of it. But as far as like the physical act of showing up to then talk about trauma, I don't think that's ever not going to be uncomfortable. And and then the rage that has been revisiting me definitely what she has come here to say on that point specifically is it's not supposed to be comfortable. And that I'm not here to make you comfortable or anyone comfortable when speaking about this and when speaking my truth and bringing the light to the dark. Because sexual trauma under any circumstances is not supposed to ever be comfortable. And there's always going to be so many layers and understandings to this topic, regardless of if it's just my own lived experience or anyone else's, is because this type of darkness is the biggest quote unquote underground operation in society today, like of the modern day slavery is human sex trafficking. So this darkness like permeates and is infiltrated just throughout our entire society and psyche. Yeah, it's not supposed to be comfortable when you hear about it. And as we continue to talk about it, and me, just me talking to me right now, is like that's part of the purpose of raising awareness around this and how it does affect people and how people are then perceiving themselves and others in the world. And then how can we keep bringing light to it to no longer contribute to creating darkness and instead creating light, you know? And the thing to note here too is that it's this is out of this three-part story little series, this is the rawest part that I've shared, but it's not even the end of the adult trauma that I had experienced. I didn't even go there yet because what I had mentioned in the I've been hiding episode is there's parts of my story that I have yet to share, and that's gonna so then that will probably feel the rawest if it hasn't even been brought to light yet in that sense, and that's where I'm regaining the strength and resilience to get to that point of sharing. But that time is approaching soon because the momentum is here of re releasing the old stuff. Another thing that I wanted to note is that I think it's interesting to hear me talk about in 2021. And I know this was even back then, the 4 years ago, I was discussing even further in the past the battle that I was having with alcohol in the inner battles of facing that involving and how it was tied into my sexual trauma that I experienced in adulthood and hearing my perspective on it then because I know for a fact in 2021 I was still having some similar inner battles. So it's to hear it now, I like forgot that. Like I straight up had forgotten that type of struggle and that connection and that entanglement of alcohol with sex and sexuality and blurred lines there because now I've been on a sober curious journey for about 3 years now and I've only drank a handful of times and so that obviously further detangled or enlightened. I don't even know what the word is there. Uh, further face that inner battle with alcohol. So yeah, just interesting to hear me talk about it back then and forgot how big of a how big that was for me in my healing. Because now it doesn't feel like an issue. It'll come up every now and then, and I will be talking about my sober curious journey because that first year would like brought a lot to light of not drinking. But yeah, that is cool to witness the growth in that sense. And in that overall is what has what was really shocking to listen to in this present moment of all of the programming and all of the heartache and the religious programming, the societal programming, the illusions of self that trauma had that was implanted into my being from those experiences. Like I honestly forgot that I used to think like that and that I used to perceive myself and other people like that and just those specific struggles. I've I forgot. So listening to that, it was a moment of like take a minute here, Kelsey, and realize how far you've come. Because listen to that, and you, I was like, who is that person? I don't even know who that is anymore because that's not, that's not my current reality, which what a blessing that is. And again, the continued testament of whatever happens within you emotionally, mentally, and spiritually as a result of trauma isn't permanent. Because listening back to that 4 years ago, I was like, oh my God, that's what we were healing from as far as the remnants of the trauma. Holy shit. And grateful that I didn't give up on myself in the healing journey and trusted the process of like, I didn't know how long it was going to take. And I didn't know really the outcome of that. But now I'm here years and years later of like, I fucking forgot that's how I used to think. And and all the fear that was present there. And it has me remember about a year ago now, I had gotten a Reiki healing from I was at a it was at a mental health event actually, and that I was volunteering at. And so I was able to yeah, get in on this Reiki healing because this person was a vendor at the event that I was volunteering. And she had said one of the main messages that was coming through was to remember who you are. I was like, I knew, ooh, that triggered me immediately. And I told her, I was like, I feel triggered, and my ego is here to say, I'm pretty sure I remember who the fuck I am, but thank you. But now I'm here telling my story again. And this episode in particular, it's been continuing to land and like integrate since I received that about a year ago. And now now, this now moment, it's even making so much more sense of remember who you are, remember where you came from, remember everything that you went through and who you are today because of it. And like me showing up as a guide for others and me sharing my journey, most of it is going to be in regards to sex and sexuality. So if I was always going to be hiding that part of self and just be talking about trauma and only just say the word trauma and kind of tiptoe around the nitty-gritty of my own healing journey, then what are we doing? It's like, what? Because it's because of all of that, like that I now have this understanding of darkness and illusions and specifically regarding sex and sexuality because of recovering from sexual trauma. Like that is why that discernment is there. That is why that understanding is there. And and the fact and then coming here and to educate and that the darkness of sex and sexuality is like the biggest psych up of that keeps people disconnected from their power. And if any kind of narrative of that is fed solely on connecting sexually through lust or pleasure driven quick hits or through force dominance and control, people are going to continue to remain disconnected from their true essence. So that whole remember who you are, yeah, remember that. And remember that for you, sex and sexuality is intimately connected to all of it. It's not just talking about the body and somatic movement and art and trauma and this and that and our feelings. Like for you, you have to bring in that personal aspect of it, of your story with sex and sexuality. And you have to remember that because that's how you became so aware and connected to the darkness. And then, yeah, when I took down all my story, that was just like, and then I just stopped talking about it in that way. And I really stopped talking about sex and sexuality because naturally that progression would happen if I stopped, if I stopped sharing my darkness in that sense, then I'm going to stop talking about sex and sexuality in the other senses too. So, yeah, this episode rings at home of like, oh shit, yeah. Remember who you are, remember how far you've come, and honor that and honor all parts of self, and that there's nothing to hide and be ashamed of. And it's these dark parts of self and these dark times aren't for nothing. And if we just pretend that they never existed, then we're really dishonoring ourselves. And then these next points that I wanted to discuss ties along with that lovely rant that I just went on, that this episode really highlights how childhood trauma transfers over into the programming we operate off of in adulthood. That trauma implants these seeds of illusion of how we perceive ourselves, others, and the world. And we can operate off of that illusion if instead of truth, instead of our true essence, until we make that decision to turn inward and face the darkness and deconstruct those illusions and feel what we need to feel. In that sense, it does become a choice and a conscious choice. And if we're just unconsciously operating and going off of all these, because there's so many programs that are within us. The uh what is it? Bruce Lipton, I believe, he talks about this really well of how there are so many programs within us. Some are serving and some are unserving, and we have to do our best to continuously be consciously aware of what programs reside within us. And especially if you experience trauma, like I know it's unfair, but then these things are now in you that you have to take responsibility for, and what's serving and what's not, and to choose something differently. Or if because if you were continue to remain unconscious and not face the shadows and not face the darkness, then you're on autopilot, and those unserving programs that you're not even aware of are there is going to become your daily existing. And this episode shows that the lens of through trauma and projection, like it had me good. And that's the thing. I was like, oh shit, I also forgot that of listening to myself of how when I was 21, I didn't even really know what emotions were and I didn't know how to regulate myself. But I will say that I didn't honestly start figuring that out until I was 24, which, which I know in the grand scheme of things that can sound young, but like we learn to start regulating ourselves as soon as we come out the womb. So then, whether it be maladaptive coping and regulating or unmaladaptive coping and regulating, serving, unserving, disconnective or connective, uh, we do what we need to do to survive. But check to the point of like, we do that right out the womb. And then I made it all the way to 24 years before I was like, oh, I don't know jack shit about emotions and regulating my emotions is wild. And what is wrong with our society and is just the byproduct of colonization, of that full separation of the self and of the feminine, of that nurturing and that interdependence and in tuneness with the self and the world around us and emotions. Like, what is life? And the last thing that I would like to note is, yeah, that was obviously, the 4 years ago or whatever, that this was originally recorded. What I didn't mention though, I mean, I was talking about how I had done a lot of work, but I was really focusing on the trauma lens that I was living through. And it was in 2020 is when I had started my sacred sexuality journey. And so that, along with my study, those were kind of happening at the same time for me, is when healing really started to integrate. Like becoming introduced to sacred sexuality and one again just getting my freaking top blown off as far as like, oh, here's another spiritual awakening and everything's been a lie that we've been fred that we've been fed. and and just the harm of colonization with religious programming is unfathomable. And that's where I was like, okay. So this whole, because you'll hear in the episode, but like I was really, really in the grips of Christianity and feeling like a horrible person because of all the sexual trauma that was happening. And then I had that belief of that sex before marriage was bad, but then I had these things happening that were out of my control, and just mix all of that together, and alcohol too, like just utter disaster. So then when sacred sexuality came in and I was already doing the deprogramming of Christianity, of the hurtfulness of it, and kind of starting to learn about the true essence of Christianity before the Roman Catholics came in and colonized it. But that was when I started to come home to my body. And I was learning how to rebuild a relationship with my body. And at the same time, that was also when I started to do somatic movement, was at the beginning of like maybe at the end of 2019, but like really becoming committed to it at the beginning of 2020. But I didn't know it was somatic movement. I didn't have the words for that until I got certified in somatic activated healing. I was like, oh, that's what this is? I've been fucking doing this already for 3 years. Obviously, we learned different moves too, but there's more to it with that specific certification. But somatic movement as a whole, and ecstatic dance, and just the healing qualities within dance that is within radiates out with all traditions, all cultures, just the healing that is dance and movement. I was tapping into that in 2020. So even though I didn't know what it was that I was doing, I just knew that I needed to move, that I needed to dance, because the darkness that I was really facing by reconnecting to my body and starting that sacred sexuality journey, because let me fucking tell you, it's not all fun and games when you're recovering from sexual trauma, like online and Instagram and all this like ooh, lovely, like connected, super spiritual, tantric, sacred sexuality. And obviously that's what pulled me in originally. But when you fucking drop into your body for the first time and connect to yourself sensually after sexual trauma, it's not a great time. And I'm not going to lie to you, but it's necessary, because you get through the mud, you get through the thick of it, you get through the darkness, and you gain a relationship with it to where you move with it and dance with it, instead of it just being this sludge that's stuck in your body, or this wall to where you can't fucking get past it and actually connect and feel pleasure again. Like you have to move through the darkness to then receive the pleasure. It's like that flip of, you allow yourself to feel the pain of it, then you can feel the pleasure of it. Because if you remain numb to it, you remain numb, period. You don't get to select feelings and sensations. It's either a yes or no. Are you going to be numb, or are you going to choose to feel? So, yeah, at the beginning of choosing to feel and connect to my body, sensually, and doing somatic movement, um, yeah, it was rough at the beginning, but it made it to where hope was there, and that I could keep going and keep facing myself, and feel the lightness visit me. And that's why I chose to move. And that's why I chose to continue to move, because I knew that if I didn't move my body, there was no way in hell I was going to be able to continue the journey and continue to face myself, because like there would have been no room. I wouldn't have been able to do it, because I wouldn't have been able to hold all of it or onto it. And that's kind of the point. Movement moves the emotions up and out of you. So then there is more space, and then you have more capacity to be here and keep going. Yeah. Holding on to it all fucking sucks. And I was deteriorating by doing that. Which all of that, what I had just said, which I didn't even mean to like go into that much on that specific rant. I just meant to say, like, oh, hey, I started my sacred sexuality journey and I started somatic movement in 2020 and was like gonna kind of leave it at that. But because of what I all just divulged, is with my personal experience in that, that's where it's bringing awareness. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from people and clients of the need to create a program, recorded content and course to have out there for people for somatic movement one-on-one, like the very beginning of feeling your feelings, connecting to your body, because it when you're recovering from trauma, like I understand how intimidating it is. And so it's really kind to the body and the nervous system and just all of it, all well-rounded experience to not just rip the band-aid off, to learn how to build it slowly and build the resilience to where we're like laying a strong foundation here to where you can then fully let yourself unravel and go, because then you have a solid baseline. So that's something that I am currently working on. Anyway, I have said all that I needed to say, and I am going to come back on at the end of the episode. So listen to the old one and keep listening, because I'm going to come back on for just a few little things to say for closing. But okay, here it is. My story part 3. Welcome to Creating Light with Kelsey. I am an art therapist who believes that the only way we can create light in our lives is by having the courage to feel our darkness. On this show, I will discuss trauma and ways to heal through modalities like art therapy, sexuality, and spirituality. I have been called to share my story to show that even in the midst of pain, I have found purpose. So join me as I continue the healing journey and create light within while feeling the darkness. I hope it inspires you to do the same. Hello world, and welcome back to Creating Light with Kelsey. On this episode, I will be talking about the traumatic incidents that happened during adulthood. So again, my main trauma that I've been sharing is sexual abuse, and if you continue to listen on this episode, now is your trigger warning. I know I came right out the gate diving into the darkness with y'all, and I appreciate you being here with me. And because this is where it all begins, in the depths of our despair, and from there we rise. My depth of my despair was college. That was definitely the time period where I was just roaming around in my previous trauma and current trauma and straight up survival mode, but not having a fucking clue, because I had no idea what emotions were really, because I had never sat with them. I didn't know how to regulate myself. I was just living through the lens of trauma and projection. So there's a lot here that I want to share with you all, and I'm kind of unsure how to break it down, but I'm just going to come out and say the trauma and then maybe take it back and do some explaining and then go back to the college experiences. But anyway, so junior year is when the unraveling began. So junior year, I was sexually assaulted twice and raped twice, all by different men. And alcohol was involved each time. Then the first rape was actually when I had lost my virginity. So yeah, that's a lot to unpack and probably a lot to hear. But I still stand by and believe that it is important to share my trauma and be vulnerable, because there The statistics are alarming, and I believe that not all of it is even documented. But I mean, when I did my study, the latest one of the articles I believe was even in either 2019 or 2020 that 99% of rapes go unreported, and then the I think average statistics is 1 in 3 women, and then 1 in 6 men, and 50% of transgendered individuals experience unwanted sexual contact, like sexual assault. So I just like this needs to be talked about, and the conversation needs to be had. It's uncomfortable. It's not easy to talk about. It's painful every time I do talk about it. But as I keep healing, the pain gets transferred into purpose, and it does become easier to talk about, so I can talk about what comes after it and not be stuck in it. Because that when we just don't do anything about it and we don't create safe space for people to share their vulnerability, we just stay stuck in it. And no one deserves to stay stuck in their trauma. Everyone can heal, and that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here talking about it and having the tough conversations that no one wants to have. Okay, that article as far as the percentages of unreported rapes, after I said it, I was like, wait, that doesn't sound right. I do remember now. It was 91%, not 99. So 91% of rapes go unreported worldwide. Okay, to back it up a bit, I believe I said it in one of the previous episodes, but sex was shamed in my household from the Christian upbringing. A lot of my upbringing and with the Christianity, in my experience, seemed black and white, either good or bad, and there was not a lot of room for a gray area, which not, in my opinion, didn't leave a lot of room for compassion and understanding. So with sex, it was bad if it happened before marriage. So don't do it. And there wasn't really any conversation other than that. When sex and sexuality is a healthy, normal part of being a human, and it happens and it's unavoidable, but then when you have this shame and then it comes up and you get curious about it, then you try to shove it down because you feel like this awful person just for having normal curiosities and thoughts about sexuality. It can get messy, and then we start rejecting all of these things about ourselves, and then sex and sexuality becomes the shadow side, the neglected self. And I was terrified to have sex. I did have a boyfriend in high school and then the beginning of college, so we broke up near the end of our sophomore year, and we did explore sexually, but we never had sex because I was fucking afraid. I wanted to, but I just felt like, oh my God, is God gonna hate me? Like, what's going on? Like, I genuinely thought that then I wouldn't be accepted or loved by God or my family if I let myself be this sexual being. Then there was also the shame that was already there because of the previous abuse in childhood. Like I said, my sexuality was also built on abuse. From 5th grade, I had all these programmings of how guys talk to you, and which was already unhealthy, but then I was searching for that and attracting that. Then I became single the end of my sophomore year of college, and I was shitting my pants, man, because I was like, oh, I thought I was going to marry this man, then it was going to be okay to have sex, but then now I'm about to be single and I have to start all over, so I'm starting from square one, and now it's going to be way long until I had sex. Like, I thought my window was going to be shorter because I was already in this serious relationship. Then I'm starting over, so I kept thinking, when am I actually going to have sex? I became a very confused young adult because I wanted to do the right thing and be this good, moral human being and not feel smited by God, which was very fucking real for me. I was totally caught up in the shoulds of life, which, man, took so long to deprogram, reconstruct and rewrite that story. Then the shame also went into the alcohol aspect. So again, very black and white. You're good or bad if you drink alcohol, and you don't want to be a bad person, so don't engage in this stuff. If you haven't already noticed, there is a lot of shame within my family, and I get to experience all of it. And then now I also get to transform it, that we get to experience love and experience in what am I saying? Experience love and acceptance, break out of this fear of not being accepted by everybody and breaking out of the people pleasing and just knowing that it's completely okay to be yourself, that you don't have to follow the shoulds of society, that we are our own, like we are our best gurus. We know what is best for ourselves, not all these outside factors coming in and having these opinions and judging you for the way that you live your life, because fuck them. Anyway, I digress a little bit. But alcohol was just as shamed as sex was for me growing up. So when I went into college, I had already experimented with alcohol a little bit, but not a lot, because I was fighting this internal battle of, oh my gosh, I drank alcohol, I'm a bad person. So then going to college, I was curious about alcohol and going out and going to parties, but then I also felt really bad about doing it. I'm not sure what I expected with the college experience, but society makes it out to be this amazing, freeing time, and that it's an opportunity to be yourself and have fun and make friends, and I wanted all of that. But it was difficult to enter this new phase of life when, like I said, I was already in survival mode, but I didn't even know it. I went to 2 different colleges, and I was an athlete. I was a cheerleader, and I was on teams where they won UCA and NCAA nationals. If you watched Cheer on Netflix, you kind of know what I'm talking about, that these were legit competitive cheerleaders. But I wanted to be friends with all of my teammates. I just had so much shame, and it prevented me from connecting. Like, I literally didn't know how, because I was living through this lens of trauma and projection. And it just felt like I never fit in. And I was only friends with a few cheerleaders out of the 3 or 4 different teams that were there. It seemed like the cheerleaders went out to a club, bar, or house party most weekends. I wanted to be a part of the party lifestyle, because I was desperate for that connection. Again, society made it look like it was so much fun, but I let my shame get in the way. I was afraid to put myself out there to go drinking with people, because I was fighting this internal battle of feeling like a bad person for drinking, even though I was curious about it. So throughout my entire college career, I really didn't even go out that much. Then in junior year, I had those 4 sexual traumas. So now you kind of understand the little background of shame that I had with sex and sexuality growing up, and the shame around alcohol. And then those 4 sexual traumas happened when I was drinking, and then happened before marriage. So my mind couldn't even understand what was going on. The first sexual assault happened in October, which was before I was 21. I was at a friend's boyfriend's house, and we were pre-gaming before we were going to go to a different party or something. I had went to the bathroom and then came back out, and then everyone was gone. So I'm standing in a strange house thinking, oh, what the heck do I do now? And I texted this guy that I had recently met for him to pick me up and take me home. And then, well, he didn't take me home. And I was very confused. I was like, oh, this happened. Did I want it to happen? Was it consensual? What was this? Because I was confused about sex and sexuality. And I was also recently single and wanting to engage in sex. And then this happened. And then I really didn't know what to think of it. And that goes along with the societal programming. I mean, I watch a lot of movies and shows now, and then they make jokes all the time of, oh, just get her a couple drinks and then she'll say yes. That's actually fucked up. It took me quite a while to realize that it wasn't consensual, because I was also trying to convince myself that what happened didn't happen. And then I was also feeling bad because I had alcohol, and then I had this story of, well, if I hadn't had been drinking, maybe this wouldn't have happened, which is another societal stigma that happens for people who experience sexual assault and have been drinking, that, well, you shouldn't have been drinking that much, which is also fucked up. Then I got to do a lot of healing around the abandonment aspect, that my friends left me alone in this house and that I blamed them that they left me so this happened to me, when the reality was they were fucking drunk, and they all went into different cars, and then they thought I was with the other friend, so they thought I was in a different car. They had no idea what was going on. But the blame comes in when you want to avoid with what you're left with. And I wasn't ready yet to feel the gravity of what I had just experienced. Then later that year, the same thing kind of happened when the first rape happened. I was hanging out with teammates, which had normally never happened. And then we went out drinking to a bar, and they left me alone with this guy. Like, this guy kept buying me a lot of drinks and then said he would take me home or something like that. And then the teammates believed him and then left me at the bar. Again, same scenario. Man said that he would take me home, and then he didn't take me home, which replayed all of the stories I had just recently experienced a few months prior. That, oh, if I wasn't left, then this wouldn't have happened. If I wasn't drinking that much, this wouldn't have happened. I was constantly in this blame cycle, blaming other people or blaming myself. And I took on a lot of the burden, but then I wasn't feeling what I was left with. Like, what are you left with if you cannot blame the other people for what happened? And I'm just left with that sometimes bad things happen to people and there's nothing we can do about it, which sucks. Like, that's a sucky reality, but that's the world we live in, and we take the good and we take the bad and we just figure shit out and we just keep moving forward. And then I have the option then to be stuck in the trauma or to move forward, to let them keep all of these pieces of me and not live my best life, or take them back and rise up and move forward and show that just because I've experienced sexual trauma doesn't mean that I am going to have a shitty life. It all comes down to choice, to have the courage to feel your pain, because you do have to go back and feel it for yourself to then work through it, to then reconstruct your mindset around perceptions of life and the world and reality. And for me, changing my perceptions around sex, because those happened, I'm 27 now, and those happened when I was 21. I only described 2 of them, but all 4 of those happened then, and it was the beginning of me even getting into sex. So what do I do now? I had no idea how to then, what is healthy sex? What does that mean? I had no idea what I was worth, and it wasn't until my life really didn't start changing until I got into grad school, and then I was just hit like a brick with therapeutic healing and what that is and what it means and how we can change our lives by choosing to heal and choosing to feel the trauma to then work through it, because it doesn't have to control our lives. Easier said than done. I know it is a process, and I do honor that, because I'm still in the process of figuring it out. I do not have it all figured out. Let's just say that right now. I am a human being. Even though I'm a therapist, I don't have it all figured out. But that's okay. Change happens one decision at a time. Again, thank you for taking the time to listen to these stories. I know in my soul that these stories ring true for so many other young women, especially when they were in college, that the bar scene can be fun, but it also has a dark side, and rapes really are ever reported. There's so much pain that's left untold, and I'm just here now to be a voice for the voiceless. It is time to keep the conversation going, not just raise awareness, but it's time to make a change. I'm here to tell you right now that this is not all that there is. This is not the end of my story. This is the beginning, that you can heal from this. What you're left with after sexual abuse is not permanent. I am a living testimony of that. You hold great power and you can take it back. This is a part of my mission, to help others do that, to rediscover their light. I'm not sure exactly how, but I do know I'll be talking about this more as far as sexual assaults and alcohol being involved and the blinds of boundaries and consent. I do know that's on my heart. And just a reminder, if you were triggered by this episode, in the last episode near the end I talked about some self-care tools that you can use at home if you did happen to be triggered, like going for a walk and journaling, meditating, doing art. Again, you can go back and look at that for a little bit further of an explanation, but please, please, please take care of yourself if you were triggered at all. But I am so glad that you are here. In the next couple episodes, I will be then transitioning and talking about my healing journey and how that started for me. Thank you for listening and creating light with me. If you enjoyed the show, spread the love by subscribing, leaving a review, or share it with a friend. If you related to this episode, reach out and let me know. Ways to connect are listed in the show notes. And until next time, remember, when we see the light in ourselves, we create light in others. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the present moment, 2024. Two things before we close. One, listening to, because there was two of the four incidences that I had shared in a little bit more detail. And I shared it because of the parallel of that traumatic experience. And so as I re-listened it back to myself, now I'm seeing, oh, okay. So I feel that it's important to do more episodes on specific situations like that and the importance of consent, because though those two sexual traumas that I shared from my personal experience happen way too often in the collective. Like, that is not a unique experience, which is unfortunate. So again, that's why I'm here, shedding light onto the dark. And I'm feel now in my heart to continue talking about that, specifically importance of consent, and also when alcohol is in the picture and what do we do with that, how do we navigate that situation, and just talking about overall confusion and lack of communication and where that's continuously causing harm, because a lot of that can be a simple solution, which is sad that a lot of just sad that a lot of things where sex can end up being traumatic is actually a simple solution. So this is why we got to keep talking about sex and sexuality and not have it be a taboo, because it's not weird. It's something that we all experience as humans. And when we talk about it, we actually honor each other and protect one another and keep each other safe. So more on that soon. Don't know when, but I just know that that is going to have to continue to have more space. And the last point, I just know that this episode is going to trigger some people. So after this, once this finishes, move your body. Put on a song, like an upbeat, fast song, and just like shake. Like literally jump around, shake your hands, like shake your head, bouncing around, moving, keeping your wrists loose and your shoulders and arms just flailing around everywhere. Shake your body to move this energy through you. And you'll breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. And just do that for one whole song. And then put on another song that you like or whatever, and just freely move your body. You don't have to know what you're doing. Just know that you're moving energy and that this energy needs to be moved through you instead of being stagnant in the body after listening to something like this. Because if it's stirring something within you, keep the motion going, or yeah, or it will remain stagnant. So put on a song, shake it out, and then a different song, and then just freely dance around. And further from that, If you sign up for my email list, you'll get access to two free somatic activated healing classes. So one is a more chill sitting down class, and then the other one is like medium intensity and standing up. So you get to experience two different versions of it. Um, but that's also a resource, a free resource for you to use as well. And that will be in the show notes. All right, my loves, thank you for being here. And remember, when we see the light in ourselves, we create light in others.